So in this video, we want to revisit the problem that we did in the previous video, but I want to show you how we can do these problems directly, both on the TI-84 graphing calculator and in StatCrunch. So our problem was about the views on death penalty. The Pew Research Group conducted a poll in which they asked, are you in favor of or opposed to executing persons as a general policy when the crime was committed while under the age of 18? Of the 580 Catholics surveyed, 180 indicated they favored capital punishment. Of 600 seculars, those who do not associate with the religion, surveyed, 238 favored capital punishment. Is there a significant difference in the proportion of individuals in these groups in favor of capital punishment for persons under the age of 18? Use a 0.01 level of significance. So previously we did this by hand. We did reject the null hypothesis, and we concluded that there is a significant difference. So again, the purpose of this video is to show you how to do this work using technology. And specifically by that, I mean we're going to use the TI-84 calculator, and we're going to use StatCrunch for this purpose. So we've checked our conditions, we meet the conditions, we're ready to conduct the test. So how do I do that on a TI graphing calculator? Well, if we go to Stat and Tests, if you look at option 6, we have 2prop z-test. So we're going to use that command. This command, 2prop z-test, is for conducting a hypothesis test for two population proportions that are independent. So I select this. When I select this, I need to fill in the information. So again, we called Catholics population 1 and the seculars population 2. So x1 is equal to 180 out of n1 was 580, and x2 was 238 out of n2, which was 600. So I just fill that in. I select the appropriate alternative hypothesis, which in this case was not equals to, and select calculate. When I select calculate, the calculator returns the test statistic, negative 3.099, and the p-value, 0.0019. Notice it also gives me what p-hat1, p-hat2, and p-hat, the pooled proportion, is as well. So just to point out that that all agrees, so p-hat1 we had 0.3103, p-hat2 we had 0.3967, which agrees. P-hat we had 0.3542, which agrees. So all of this agrees. Our test statistic, when we calculated it, we got negative 3.102. The calculator is saying negative 3.099. So we have a little bit of error here, and the reason for that error is the fact that we rounded these p-hats to 4 places, and the calculator doesn't. So the calculator is actually more accurate. The p-value, we got 0.0019, both by hand and with the calculator. So again, we still have to know what to do with that. So if we're using the calculator to calculate our test statistic, and we're using the classical approach, we still have to figure out the critical values and compare the negative 3.099 to the critical value to reject. If we use the calculator to find the p-value, we still have to know to compare that to 0.01. Since it's less, we reject. Now, in the same way, in StatCrunch, I can go to Stat and Proportion Stats. We've been here before. This time, however, we have 2 samples. So we're going to go to 2 sample proportion stats instead of 1 sample proportion stats. Now, the options that we have here are similar to what we've seen before. Do we have data or do we have summary information? Well, in this case, we have summary information. So I select that, and then I just need to fill in what I know. So again, if sample 1 is coming from Catholics and sample 2 is coming from seculars, I just fill in the information. So the number of successes was 180 for Catholics out of 580 number of observations. For sample 2, we had 238 successes out of 600 observations. We are performing a hypothesis test, so I'm leaving the bullet here for hypothesis test. Now there is a difference here from what we've seen previously. If we say that P1 equals P2, that's equivalent to saying that P1 minus P2 equals 0. And this is the form that StatCrunch uses. Likewise, if we say P1 is not equal to P2, that's equivalent to saying P1 minus P2 is not equal to 0. And so again, this is the form that StatCrunch uses. So my null hypothesis is that P1 minus P2 equals 0. My alternative in this case, since it's a two-tailed test, is that P1 minus P2 is not equal to 0. And if it was a left-tailed test, we would choose less than. If it was a right-tailed test, we would choose greater than. If I say compute, then StatCrunch gives us the test statistic, negative 3.099. That agrees with our calculator. Again, that's slightly different from our by hand calculation because we were off a little bit by hand because we had rounded. And our p-value is 0.0019, which agrees with both our by hand and calculator result. So again, we have to know what to do with that once StatCrunch calculates for us. So we would compare the negative 3.099 to the critical value to reject. If we're using the p-value approach, then we would compare the 0.0019 to the 0.01, and because that's less, we reject. So again, we reject the null hypothesis. We're rejecting that the proportion of Catholics equals the proportion of seculars who favor capital punishment when the crime was committed by someone under the age of 18. And we are concluding that there is a significant difference between those two proportions.